I first want to welcome everybody here. This is my first ElixirConf, so I'm excited to be here. I hail from the sprawling metropolis of Toledo, Ohio. I've been told by more than 0 people that I look like Badger from Breaking Bad. I have a beautiful family. These are my 3 daughters. And I have a badass wife, a dog named Chewy for obvious reasons. And I ride my e-bike around everywhere, my electric motorcycle. Is anybody else an e-head in here? No? Oh, right, let's talk. Lazy River. All right. So I am also a bot builder. It started back in these days, which was 10 years ago. It wasn't even really that far along. But I created a simple script called Admiral Akbar. And it would just look in the channel when somebody would say something like it's a trap, and then just show a random image on the internet like this one. And that got me hooked. I created an app in the App Store, in the Slack App Store, and then I also work with a client that is a Slack first application. It's basically, I'd call it Basecamp in Slack. It's a very, very complicated and popular application. But let's talk about what chatbots are real quick. So chatbot is a computer program designed to simulate a conversation with a human. And it works like this. You guys are probably familiar. You type inside a application or a website to the platform. The platform then talks to your application. It will send it JSON, and then your application can optionally send stuff back to the platform, and then the platform will send that back on to the user. This should look pretty familiar because this is client-server development, just that the client is the platform. It's not the browser. So it limits you. But chatbots are not new. Chatbots started with this man, Joseph Weizenbaum. He was born in Germany, became a US citizen, started working at MIT, and he looks a lot like another scientist you may recognize, Albert Einstein. They both had just look at those mustaches. Those are like Lorax-esque mustaches. Those are great. That's really where the similarities end, though, because Albert Einstein was more interested in kind of nuclear stuff, where Joseph Weizenbaum was more interested in the work that Alan Turing did during World War II. And you guys are well aware that he created the Turing test. And that led Weizenberg to create, uh-oh, my mic. Oh boy. Back streets, back. All right. Am I good? Am I good? Am I good?
Just a little bit up and we are set.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so he created ELIZA, and ELIZA mimicked kind of psychotherapist, and it didn't use like NLP or any sort of AI, right? That wasn't even around then. What he did was basically did a pattern match and made everything that the user would say, turned it into a question, and that would prompt the user to continue talking with that. And that created a whole new user conversational UI applications, including this one. This was an early iPhone application. You could type or text into it. Came out in 2007. And you could ask it things like news and weather and sports and stuff. Does anybody know what this application is? This is Siri. This is Siri before Apple U2 albumed it and put it in all our phones. They bought it, and sadly, it's kind of stayed the same. But here's another chatbot. Does anybody know what this is? This is a scary guy. This is the Googly Minotaur, and it's sat inside the website of Radiohead, the band. And you could ask it stuff like tour information, discography information. So if we want to know the reason to see that Radiohead is always ahead of their time, that's another point. Okay, but why are chatbots important? Let's talk about this real quick. Well, we all want to contribute to this, right? We all want this. We all want to contribute to this. And you guys, we are so close. We are so close. Like 10 years, we can maybe do it, maybe. But so this is a common scenario you see on a bus or a train station. And either they're going down this hellhole, or they're probably talking to their friends, chatting on some sort of application. And I want to point something out here real quick. So for this slide, I just Googled iOS iMessage application. And I grabbed the first image, and I started doing my slides together, and I looked at this conversation, and it was really weird. I had to point it out to you guys. I literally found this on the internet. So, Ryan here says, hey, you ready? Hey, man, we on for hoops this afternoon? His buddy says, you know it. He says, good, because we taking you boys down. His buddy says, not a chance. And then he comes back and says, hi, lamb chop. It's only been an hour, and I miss you already. Sad face, love you, kissy, kissy face. You guys, what occurred at that basketball game? So I don't know. But the reason people use these is because they're familiar, right? They're already, they're familiar with it. It's kind of like us when we see a Unix system, right? They know that. So it's very familiar. And there's less barriers. They probably have this application on their phone. One industry that has this right is the ride-sharing industry. You can get a Lyft or an Uber on your iOS or iPhone. You can get on the web. You can get on the desktop. You can text. You can get it on all the apps. So be where your users are. And that's something you can take for your services and your applications and take a subset of that and put them on platforms. This is something that my client did. Basically, Stripe reached out to us and wanted us to put our Slack app on Stripe, so many S's. And we didn't want to do that, so we took, we didn't want to just put our app on there, so we took specific Stripe stuff that would help Stripe users and put that on their platform. So you can do, I call it mullet-driven work. Put the party stuff on one side and the fun stuff on the other. And then if you do it right, you can have just one bot. Also, if you're trying to do like a side project or side hustle, these are great stair-stepper approaches on these applications, these platforms. They market for you. You don't have to do as much marketing. Like my client I gave you, we get like 50 users a day, which is a lot on Slack. And their website looks like this, like it's jank. So it works. And these things are fun as hell to build, right? It's just, I don't know what it is. They're just, once you get a reaction from the thing that you built, it's fun. Okay, so how are chatbots built today? Real quick, I want to go through Slack, because we want to specifically talk about Slack now. And if you haven't installed anything, I just want to real quick show you how it's done. Basically, Slack has an app directory. Let's just use a random one right here. It's called Tatsu. I don't know. All that does is take you to a website where you will have like a sign up with Slack, a sign in with Slack, which then sends you back to Slack for your OAuth process, right? So this is the permissions that you want your bot to have, and the user has to acknowledge that. Once they do, they now have a new user in their app, in their Slack workspace for your bot. And now your application can just start using it, and it'll start getting information from Slack. And the way they're built today, JavaScript. So I love JavaScript, actually. Slack has an official library called Bolt, and it's actually a really, really good library. Basically, all I have to do is create an app right there, start it up so that it listens for events coming from Slack. And then where it says add functionality here, you basically just fill this out. So these are the different entry points in Slack. Like Slack can send you an event, right? A user changed their name. They can send you messages, actions, shortcuts, and commands. And each of these have their own identifier. So basically all this is doing is a router, right? It's looking at a certain pattern and handling it with that function. And I built apps using this library, and it's really, really nice. Your app will completely work on this framework. But as you grow and as you get bigger, there are some limitations and also maintenance. And I'm not trying to hate on Node. Node's okay. But I just want to, I'm making a case for Elixir. So if you have CPU performant things, you're going to do it in the back. Node has a single-threaded event loop. It'll always be single-threaded. It can only handle events in one loop, but they do have things called worker threads. These are similar to Erlang processes, but they're completely not the same. Like, they're really high. They use a lot of high CPU, I believe, and a lot of memory. And then if one of those bots go down, all your bots go down, right? And both Tatsu and my client are written in Ruby, and this happens to us all the time. Like one exception can cause all the bots to go in. So I want to make a case for Elixir. Well, obviously we know all the things that Elixir provides, right? Speed, processes, bots. Each bot can be their own process. Hot code reloading. We have to think about when we deploy our applications, we deploy them on Heroku, but every time you deploy, it brings all the bots down. So you have to think about deploying. So Erlang with hot code reloading is nice. And they're fault tolerant, right? And Elixir was built on Erlang. The stands for Ericsson, and was built for communication. I don't know if this stat is still this. Does anybody know like 90% of the world's messages go through some sort of Erlang code? Anybody heard that stat? Something like that? Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of fits, right? Conversational UIs, good for telephones, probably good for chatbots. It's fast. As you guys know, Phoenix is like one of the fastest web frameworks, stateful processes, right? So we can have each bot, each workspace in their own little process, a supervisor watching them. They can chat to each other easily, and they can all hold state. And that's really exactly what we need. Hot code reloading. I currently have this working. I don't know if it's worth it yet. I have it running on Elixir, and it's working great. I just don't have it in production yet. So, and of course, Elixir is fault tolerant, right? One of your processes go down, the rest of your bots don't even know, and your supervisor can start that back up. You guys had to see that animation. Okay, so how can we improve chatbots? Well, I set out to build a framework, and I wanted these things in it. It needed to have plug, because it needs to talk to these frameworks, and it needs to integrate with other applications. I wanted to have the router, because I didn't want the main code of your chatbots is routing. If I see this, then do that, right? Middleware. So every request, I wanted the ability to run the same sort of middleware, sort of like plug. Context is really just a map that holds variables you can use in the templates and the controllers. Controllers are just what you think they are, just like in Phoenix. They prepare your responses, all that stuff. And then templates. And templates are just basically the JSON that gets sent back. And so I created that, and I called it Juvet, and it is open source at Juvet/Juvet right now. Does anybody know where this name comes from? This is a stretch. If anybody gets this, I will. So if you guys have been noticing, I've been using these background images from a movie called Ex Machina. Is anybody, not the ThoughtBot, wonderful ThoughtBot framework, which I think is also probably named because of this movie. But Ex Machina, if you haven't seen it, is basically about a billionaire computer scientist who doesn't want to go to Mars, but he wants to make basically human robots. And he does that in his little mansion in the woods. And most of this movie was shot on location. This is not actually a green screen. And that location is in Norway. And it's a hotel called Juvet. Now, it's now a hotel you can rent. So when I actually launched Juvet, I want to actually go to Norway and like stay there and like hit the button and then like launch it. And so it's called Juvet until I get probably one of these, but right now it's just called Juvet. And I'm extracting this out of the next version of Tatsu that I'm working on. Tatsu right now is in Ruby, and I'm extracting this out. Now, Tatsu is closed source. I didn't want to show that to you, so I built another bot specifically for this, and I give you guys Lobotsky. So, if you don't know the reference, a lot of movies in this talk. It's based on the best movie of all time, The Big Lebowski. Am I good? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Reclaiming my time? Okay. That is based, so what does Lobotsky do? What does Lobotsky do? It helps you find dispensaries, bowling alleys, and cocktail bars all inside Slack. So, and he uses 3 different commands to find that. And these commands are based on the movie. So here, the command for trying to find cocktail bars is called Beverage Here Man, and it's based on this scene.
In the limo, you son of a bitch, no argument. Hey, careful, man. There's a beverage here, huh?
And so all of these different commands will perform, and we're going to do a walkthrough of this. Does anybody like this logo? This logo's pretty nice, huh? Yeah, okay. Well, before you clap, hold on. So I'm a huge fan of Aaron Draplin. So if you guys notice, that's very Aaron Draplin-ish. If you guys know who Aaron Draplin is, he's a designer out of Seattle, and he's a logo designer, and I've reached out to him several times to make logos for other projects of mine. He's always super busy. So you know who wasn't busy though? Dolly wasn't busy. So Dolly made this logo. So sorry, Aaron. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm sorry. Go buy his merch to help me. Okay, so this is open source at Lobotsky, jwright/Lobotsky, and let us do a quick demo of this. Mirror. Okay, now, hopefully this works, because it did not work in my hotel room. Sweet. Let me make sure it's running. And I think it is because of ngrok. So if you guys have to work with any sort of OAuth, right, in your applications, you probably use ngrok or something like that. No different with this. But this add to Slack will go and OAuth with Slack. And the only thing we do is we want to be able to have commands, and we want to read information about a team. I don't know why this is sitting here. Still spinning. There you go. And now it goes back to your application, and basically you throw up this. And then inside your application, now if they would click this, it would go, but this goes to production because I hard-coded Lobotsky like an idiot, so sorry about that. So Lobotsky local. Okay, so if I say like beverage here, man, please work. I didn't even get the request. Yeah, okay. If this works, you will be able to hopefully install this if Slack approves it. But let me show you some interactions with it. Yeah, so like you can say, so here I did, if you want to search for cannabis dispensaries, that is, what day is it? So you say / what day is it? Then it gives you a little splash screen, says, hey, I got the message, I'm searching, and then you give it the location, and then it gives you, the 10 locations, and then you can go out to Yelp and get those locations. So it's open source, there it is. Ooh, okay. Should have did private browsing. No, it's fine, it's fine. It should be legal. I mean, it is legal here. Anyway. Okay. Let's do a quick walkthrough, okay? I'm going to go through this really quick because a lot of this you can probably get from the README, but I want to explain some of the thoughts behind that to get a lot of your guys' opinions, actually, some feedback on this. So basically, you add your dependency Juvet, and it's at 0 0.0.2. That's right. Yeah, so I am using this not in production, but I am extracting it right now, and it's working very well. So that like 80% of the Slack functionality is there. Then it creates a supervision. It's an application, so you need to add it to your extra apps. It creates a supervision tree, creates a bot factory, and this thing called a superintendent that watches for bots. And then anytime a new bot starts up, is installed, 2 new processes start, a supervisor and then a bot for that, and then a bot for that. So that's pretty cool. You can kind of watch the observer while you install it.
Check your mic. Yeah, I think you muted yourself. We can hear you, but the recording can't.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello? I am not a performer. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nah, I got it. I'm a pro now. Hello? Hello? Is it? Okay. All right. Okay. Configure. Then you have to configure. Basically, you have to specify the module that your bot is, the module that your router is, and then some Slack stuff. Let me explain this a little bit. So when you create a command in Slack in your app, it gives you an endpoint that is going to send those webhooks to. So you just need to tell Juvet where that is. This will probably change. These will probably be defaults. And then the other thing you have to provide is your signing secret. So when you create an app in Slack, you'll get a signing secret because we verify every request that comes in to make sure it came from Slack. Then you just create your module, your bot module. You say use Juvet bot. Since we reference it, we're just going to create the bot for right now. And then we created the router. And then you need to add the plug. So in your endpoint, in your Phoenix application, let's say, you add this Juvet plug. And the plug just listens for those specific endpoints. There's 2 endpoints in Slack. One's actions and one's commands. There's also events and other ones. But since we're not using actions, it won't even create an endpoint for that. So anything that comes to your app will just 404. And then you can use plug to integrate to an existing app. Now, we're going to add the command route. So we're going to go back to our router. And we need this platform block, and we're going to specify the platform. Slack, obviously, is the only supported platform right now. And then we specify command route, and we specify what that command is, and then it's going to go to that controller. Now, I went with this route with kind of the Rails-ish string, and the reason I like that is because then you don't, that module doesn't have to exist yet. So I would love to you guys' feedback if we should do the MFA type that like the router in Phoenix uses or this. I don't know yet. So anyway, so the router is a DSL to define routes, finds the appropriate route, and it is run as middleware. I just want to point out this. You don't have to look at this code, but this is basically just the code necessary. There are 1 or 2 other modules, but they're not as detailed. But this is basically just the only thing you need to support a platform, is you just need to basically build the router. And so that's really, and then these are the only places where the shape of that JSON data from Slack is used. I didn't want that shape to leak in to the controllers and stuff because I want the controllers to be able to work with multiple platforms. So, middleware, chain responsibility, together extension points, and modify the context and common runtime on each request. This is how it's kind of defined inside the router. Juvet comes with its own sort of middleware. Then you can put your own middleware in there. And then the last piece of middleware has to be is the routing of the request. So let's take a look at this find current team middleware. All there is one call method, takes in the context. You can split it out the way you want. All this is doing is basically, looking up that team in our database based on the team ID that came in and for that platform that came in. If the team is found, we put it into that context so that we can use that team in our controller and in our template down the road. If we don't find it, we don't really care, but there are affordances where you can halt or stop the whole processing of the request. Okay, so that's the context. let's go back to our controller. So now we got to create a controller. Here's our controller. And the only thing this is doing in this demo is basically sending back to the person that typed in the command. It's just saying, hey, gotcha, user ID, I got your location as, and then that's the location. Simple response. So if you have simple responses, you can do it like that. Now, that's the controller, right? It has the same job as a Phoenix controller, MVC controller, right? I'm going to skip this, but basically I wanted to show here that kind of the schema you need on all these things. You're going to need teams, users, and teammates that link those two. And each of those things have external IDs. And that schema kind of works with Teams, with Slack, and with Discord. Okay, I want to talk about, let's say you needed a more robust response in Slack. Slack has this idea of, it's called block kit, where you can provide some JSON that they define, and it has like little sections, it'll have headers, drop-downs, things you can define in their block kit. And so the only thing a template is in Juvet right now is just basically a module that returns a map. I want to make these better, but they fit nicely within the controller, right? You just say template.toMessage and you send it the data. I want them to be, they are platform dependent. I want them to be platform independent. I'll talk more about that later. Okay, trade-offs. This is cool, right? So like all of our app is, I just wanted to build that cool animation. So all your stuff is hidden, right? Now you got a familiar pattern that you know, and everything is in its nice little basket. Everything's Marie Kondo'd out. You know where things go, right? You don't need to think about stuff. I freaking love that. And then the cool thing with Juvet is there's extension points in all these different areas. So in middleware, there's an extension point. Before running a controller, there's going to be before and after actions on the controller before the response is sent. A lot of these will be hidden, but they'll be there, powerful to make, and powerful enough to make your bots for all your platforms. Juvet in its current form is overkill for simple broadcast stuff. So if you have something like GitHub or a support system that just sends stuff from your service to Slack, just build that yourself. It's just a webhook. There may be some piece of Juvet that handles that. And then the other bad thing with this right now is Juvet is really hard to debug. When you have libraries that sit inside your call stack, you need to deal with those. You need to think about that really well and deal with those really, really well. So right now, like Juvet, like if there's an error after you send a request, it just kind of fails silently. Working on it. Speaking of working on it, look at that. Okay, I want to go really talk quick about this. A lot of times in chatbot apps, there's an MVC doesn't work in certain situations. So if you think about your chatbot, it's kind of like a tree, right? You have conversations that end up at some sort of leaf, right? And then you want to go back up. Maybe you want to go back up. Well, there's a lot of times where you get to this leaf and you just have to ask it, your user, a bunch of questions. And that would be so tedious. It's so tedious to set up those routes for all those different questions. So I am going to build something like this. I built this for Ruby. I want to build it for Elixir as well. But it's basically a DSL to basically get questions answered. And I built this for Ruby. It kind of looks like that. If you're interested in that, it's there. We're going to support additional platforms. Teams, Discord, Twilio, and Alexa. That's the current roadmap. Again, part of this talk is to get some feedback from you all. Better templating, like I said, it's just a module. I would like to support components and partials, and I would like to get rid of the separate platforms. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I don't know if it's a separate UI templating language or if it's an automated thing. I don't know. But this is a very big part of, this is very time consuming to create these partials on multiple platforms. Also, authentication, you have to roll your own right now, but I want to add to the router the ability, I don't know if they're going to be called login and sign up, but you know, the post-authentication hook to get into the whole flow. And then generators. So there is no generators right now, everything's by hand. So the ability to create routes and controllers and templates, generators. There is one generator I want to make. So in Slack, you can extract your app as a JSON or YAML file. So I'd like to create a generator that gets that JSON or YAML and creates all your routes and controllers that you need from that. And then better error messages, like I said. 5 minutes, all right, we have time. I want to go through a few just general chat concepts that I've found helpful over the years. There's this thing called random access memory. I didn't come up with it. But this is basically the problem with today's chatbots, including the ones I create. They're pretty stupid, right? And the reason they're stupid is because they kind of force the user to kind of do this whole like back and forth with the chatbot. Like if it messes up, then you kind of have to start all over, right? Like Siri, right? You ask the Siri weather, and then you say, okay, what about tomorrow, right? Siri has no idea what you're talking about. So random access memory works in this way, and part of this is going to be built in Juvet, into Juvet. But you want to be able to talk to your bots just like you talk to a human, right? You want to give them all the information you have at once, and then nobody's perfect. They're going to screw up, and you want them to be able to change that very easily, right? And so you need to do two things. You need to detect the parameters. So let's say you want, somebody's ordering a t-shirt, right? So you're going to need the size and the color, let's say. So you know that you need those two parameters. You want to detect that you have those two parameters and give them feedback if you don't have those two parameters. And allow them to get those, allow it easily to get those other parameters you're missing. And then allow change. So keep that stuff in context so that when they say it, you know what they're talking about. How much time? I think we're gonna go to some Q&A here. So I would really love some help from this community. I've been working on this for a couple years by myself, and that sucks because I don't know if I'm making all the right decisions. I'm not making all the right decisions. So if you guys are interested, if you're passionate about chatbots like I am, I'd love talk with me. I'd love to get some partners, stars and PRs. I'd also love, if you're interested in that meetings. All the code and all that stuff is on this here. I am looking at, sorry, all the code is there. If you want to get it, it's at speakerdeck/jwright/ElixirConf 2022. If you don't want to take a picture of the true winner of the pandemic, the QR code. I'm on GitHub at jwright, Twitter at jwright. If you don't do the Twitter thing, I get it. Good on you. I wish I didn't. Email, if you want to get a hold of me, I do a podcast with a buddy where we talk about this stuff. Any questions? Do I have time for questions?
I think we don't have time for questions.
Just joking.
Sorry.
If you want questions, I'll be out there. Thank you, guys.